One. Good evening, everyone. This is Reed Kastner-Lang, host of Dharma Unfiltered, episode 23, coming in from the University of Miami in Florida. It's a nice 78 degrees here. Well, it's in the negatives up in Wisconsin, so I'm appreciating that right now. We got a very special guest on the podcast, Amos Valenti. I was originally introduced to him. I think he actually reached out to us. He's the founder of or co-founder of Pitson Ketchup. And so I think they reached out to us on Instagram, and we just kind of had some brief kind of conversations over text just about, what it's like kind of owning a ketchup business and scaling it. But I talked to him the other day, and we had a really good conversation about a lot of things other than owning a ketchup business. And so just to go off kind of what he said, and it seems like Amos is a pretty much a Renaissance man. He's into a bunch of different things. Italian food lover, multi-string instrumentalist, crochet enthusiast, hand tool woodworking, and backpacking and hiking. You built an aquaponics greenhouse out of free and found materials, mud oven builder, and ideas man. Amos, introduce yourself.
Yes, sir. Well, thanks for having me tonight. Basically, just a regular Renaissance man, born and raised in northeastern Pennsylvania. Coal country, actually. The region of Pennsylvania I'm from provided the anthracite coal that basically powered the nation, in the early foundations of the industrial periods of the country. That's where all the anthracite came from, was Pennsylvania, West Virginia, Ohio, and stuff like that. But specifically, right where I'm from, northeastern Pennsylvania, we produce the coal, for the whole nation. So third generation here, out of people, 2 older brothers, and grew up here, went to school, went to Penn State. I got my bachelor's degree at Penn State, and then worked for a number of years. And a few years later, I went and got a post-bachelor's teaching certificate at Millersville University in technology education. So it would be considered like a shop teacher or something like that. Mm-hmm. And not too long after that, came back here, started working with a friend of mine who owns a commercial flooring business. And a few years after that, we started making ketchup, Pitson Ketchup Company. We found a fun little project, kind of in honor of our hometown, Pitson, which is the quality tomato capital of the world. And just living life, man. Awesome. Just got married recently, actually, in October.
Just October? Okay.
Yeah, in October, yeah. Actually, my wife and I were together since 2007, and we've known each other since high school.
Wow.
And, we were together for a number of years before we decided to actually get married. But, yeah, it was like right in the middle of COVID. We didn't have plans to, it just kind of happened. And it was nice because then I have to have like a big wedding. People are always talking about weddings and cost a lot of money, and there was a lot of stress, and so it was great. We just had our family there and a couple of really close friends, and we got married right down the street from our house at what's called the 40 Fort Meeting House, which is I live in the town of 40 Fort, Pennsylvania, which is was a fort at one point. There was a fort of 40 men during frontier times, basically. We actually have some notoriety now. It was John Oliver gave us a shout out because one of the only cases of election fraud, at least here where we live, what happened from 40 Fort. Some guy voted twice, and it caused this whole big deal. Or John Fetterman, he's our lieutenant governor, but John Oliver, HBO guy, and does a couple other things, I guess. But he did a big segment on us, so we. We had some national attention there for a second, tiny little town. Well, we got married at what's called the 40 Fort Meeting House, which is a building from the 1800s, and it was the meeting house for 40 Fort. They conducted all the business there and stuff. And it's actually in the 40 Fort Cemetery, which is a historical cemetery here in the area, So
yeah, that's super cool. Yeah. So how old are you now?
40. Just turned 40 in September.
Okay. So. Okay, yeah. Well, tell me a little bit more about your previous kind of experiences and, what just with I guess, college and just how your previous experience have gotten you to the point with kind of what you're doing now.
Well, I guess like I went to a really small school. We graduated. I think there was less than 40 kids in in the class, um, and so since then I never really knew anyone who wasn't kind of just like me, which isn't a bad thing. But I got into the restaurant industry right as soon as I was 18. I got a job at a local chain restaurant, and that's what kind of at least that's where I discovered like my love for food service, at least like in that capacity. I waited tables there and I cooked, and it was just such a great environment for a lot of different things. It was a catalyst for a lot of different things in my life. And that kind of led me into kind of being more comfortable with myself and who I was as a person, because I felt like a lot of things I've done up until that point were things I did because other people were doing. So that allowed me to be a little more independent, a little more confident in my own abilities and myself. And then, from there, I was in school. I went to Penn State, right? During that time, I was going to Penn State, and I had a pretty run-of-the-mill college experience up until the point where I lost my financial aid and stuff because I was more interested in extracurricular activities than I wasn't actually going to school, because I really didn't have a direction. I was going to school because, again, that was one of the things I was supposed to be doing.
Right.
Like, oh, Amos, you go to school, and I think it's just in general humans. We tend to see life in a very linear fashion. That's why everything seems like it was just yesterday.
Of course, and that's kind of why I wanted to ask about that progression, because I obviously, like, I'm surrounded with that kind of group thought, I guess, and assimilation of like college kids on campus and stuff. But our conversation the other night proved to me that like you're like not like everyone else. You're into a lot of different things that a lot of people aren't. So yeah, go on with like college.
Well, that was kind of so I lost my financial aid, and then kind of got serious about it, and then I just said, okay, if I was going to do it, it was worth doing. So I finished strong, got my business degree, and then shortly after that, I got into the food service management world, which is I managed the food service program for the Lebanon School District. Lebanon is a town in Pennsylvania, about an hour and a half south of where I'm from. Big Amish country down there. It's just north of Lancaster, Pennsylvania, which is a really big Amish place too. So there was 7 schools, and you had to manage the school, or manage the program basically. So each school had their own kitchen, full lunch ladies and stuff like that. And you had to plan the menus and order the food and kind of oversee the whole operation of all of it. So it gave me a good sense of how people were living too in other areas and other ways, and it kind of opened up my mind to some of these bigger issues that we have surrounding food and in food and things like that. It's like at that time the school district was somewhere like 65% of the school district was qualified for free or reduced lunch, which was like a threshold of basically poverty,
Right.
and under, so that was a lot of people, when you think about it from that standpoint.
Right.
And those problems, I think, have only just been magnified, especially recently and stuff like that. So after I got out of that, that's when I decided I was going to go back to school and get my teaching certificate. Kind of, it was in and around that time. There was like 1 or 2 years in between where I came home and I was working construction and different things like that. I've always worked in construction. That's what my father did. He was a union carpenter for when we were kids growing up. I have 2 older brothers, and then he eventually started teaching it. He was the top cabinet making carpentry for like a Votech, basically. So
Yeah.
it was kind of like that was where that influence came from. It's funny too, because my mom was a lunch lady. She managed the food service program at Seton, was the small school I went to. So I kind of like followed in both of their footsteps. But my dad always discouraged becoming like getting into the trades, you know, because they struggled. My parents struggled. You know, we didn't come from a lot of money, so you know, they always discouraged it. They like he was kind of the traditional mindset, like you go to school and become a doctor or a lawyer, you know, and those things. You know, when I was a kid, I wanted to be like Matlock and live in the courthouse, you know, and I thought of things in those terms, you know, because that's what made sense, you know. But then when I went back to stop doing that and went back to get my teaching certificate, I was 29, and I met a group of guys that were probably 20 and 21, you know, that were in college. They were taking the same class I was taking. It was a post-bachelor's program, but there was kids there obviously who were as old as you are, and you know, a few years older, taking the same classes. So you know, I became friends with a group of guys down there who were 10 years younger than I was. But I rediscovered that time, like we talked about the other day, like the luxury of having the time to be able to be on YouTube watching guys build mud ovens, and you know, learning how to crochet, and just taking on different things and different you know, like just because, you know, I have a lot of friends who want to do things, or a lot of people want to do things, but not a lot of people do a lot of things, because most of the time people are just in a hurry to get the next red light just to get home, you know.
Right.
Just because that's kind of what we do, you know. We everything's linear, and if you check the goals of life, you know, like you've gotten to college and you've gotten your job, and maybe you're getting married and you're having kids or whatever, like that's where a lot of my friends were on that same arc, you know. So
and I feel like that's especially hard to avoid when you're in a small town that seems linear, that doesn't seem like it seems like, you know, it's going to be the same, like the small town that I'm from, Dousman, like it really not much has changed in terms of kind of like what is there. You know, I've seen pictures from like the 1960s and it looks like exactly the same. So I feel like for a lot of kids, they may feel like trapped in a sense, when they're not able to see the rest of the world. It's easy to forget that there's kind of a whole nother world out there, and even within your own community. You know what I mean?
Yeah, because we when you look at pictures of Pittston from back in the day, it was a boom town. You know, like it was a lot, especially the whole northeastern Pennsylvania, the valley, the coal producing areas. You know, the population is like, you know, cut in a third. You know, when you talk about a town that had 15,000 people to 6,000 people, like all of that plays in, you know, the infrastructure, the services that are available and things like that, the opportunities that are available for people. So when I was growing up in Pittston, it was a total dump. Like all the buildings were shut down, and like all of the storefronts were closed. And only until the last few years recently, when they got some grant money and different things like that, where things started changing, and you could see it. You were able to see a difference at least, but still a lot of the old mindset was there, where people were still stuck in the same kind of like, you know, very guarded and jaded, and you know, there was nothing to celebrate. But in a way, it's starting to change. Some of that is changing, although a lot of the same people are still in charge, or still the vanguards of the power structure. You know, even in a tiny town like Pittston,
Right.
Still has enough of the old influence that it gets close, but we can never get there because of one reason or another, you know. And that was part of the reason why me and a couple of friends wanted to start a business in Pittston and based around Pittston, just to give some other reason for somebody that's my town, that's where I'm from, you know, like just to think about it in a different way, as opposed to being like, you know, you hear these articles all the time. It's like, oh, Pittston's the most, or you know, Wilkes-Barre Scranton area is the most depressed place in the world, you know, like top 10 unhappiest places to be, you know. Couple that with you know, the opioid epidemic, you know, and different things like that. You know, it's really hit this area hard. and the industry has come and gone. Now it's basically just industrial parks full of warehouses for shipping and receiving. It's like and the jobs, I guess, that were they are the new jobs that people did. There used to be manufacturing economy, and this was a big manufacturing area before that. It was a big industrial coal area before that. So this is the next iteration. It's a big warehousing area.
Mhm.
What will the next iteration be? Like, could it? Hopefully, it's a whole iteration of people that are able to take advantage then of the infrastructure that's still here, and the opportunity to be able to do something in a way that doesn't really take a lot of capital investment. Because labor is cheap here, man. Land is cheap. Things are cheaper. So if you wanted to build a business in some capacity, you could do it here because we're in 2 hours of major markets, New York City, Philadelphia, the whole Northeast corridor. It's not like we're talking about being out in the middle of nowhere somewhere. It's like we're 2 hours from New York City.
Right.
That's a big opportunity for somebody who wants to be able to be involved in that market. So hopefully that's the next iteration of it, is it becomes an area where people can go back to, I don't want to say the roots, but kind of harness some of that like old time work ethic energy, because I have found that though, people up here work, man, big time. When I went down to like Florida, I spent a year in Florida, and even just south of Hazelton, I lived in Lebanon, like people just worked a little differently down there,
Yeah.
I don't want to say they were slower, not for the better or for the worse, but like we were out producing people, like
I know exactly what you mean, man. Like, because it sounds pretty similar to where I'm from too. It's a small, super small Midwestern town. This blue collar, hardworking people, and when I left there and I came down here last semester, and it was the first time I was away from Wisconsin my whole life. I've been there the past 18 years. I got down here and I started to kind of look back and kind of have a new perspective on Wisconsin. And really, I saw I saw it not so much the way that I have been seeing it the past few years, which was that kind of monotonous, just kind of going through the motions, just nothing really happening. To these are really fucking hardworking people, and they prioritize like family and the small town community. Like, you're not going to find that down here. You're not going to find that a lot of places outside of those small towns, and it's something that I've learned, that I've kind of gained like a lot of admiration for.
Yeah, I mean, that's I guess that comes from areas that were settled in and around things like that, some form of industry or something. Like, what's the industry in Wisconsin? It's like farming or mining or timber?
No, it's definitely farm. Well, I mean, we're known for dairy, we're known for agriculture, but in the north, because we have a cabin in northern Wisconsin, and it's a lot of lumber and timber and trees and wood. But yeah, no, it's overall overwhelmingly the majority of the state is definitely agriculture. And now where I'm from, southeastern Wisconsin, is like the majority of people in Wisconsin live in southeastern Wisconsin. Like, I'm in basically a suburb of Milwaukee, and so I guess there's not so much that, but it still kind of has those roots in it.
Sure.
And yeah, it's very much like I'm in a Facebook group that's called like Friends for a Greater Dousman. And it's just the greatest thing to sometimes see these stories that people have, just of like just people in the community, strangers in the community, just like supporting each other. Whether someone had a flat tire on the road and it was -5 degrees and 3 people stopped to help them out, like, it's beautiful, and you don't see that in other places, and that's something that I miss. But I really,
maybe you could be the guy that brings some of that Wisconsin down to Miami. Then it's I guess wherever you're at, I guess if you could try to do what you're doing, like obviously you're trying to do a lot, trying to make some things happen. So that's all you can really do. People just need to live their lives, and like a guy just retired here. He was a shoemaker, or he fixed shoes. That was his thing. And like he worked 75 years, man, fixing shoes. That was his thing. And, people were like that then, or, when it was just a life, you worked a job because that job made you money and you need the money to live your life, and I want to say it was a simple life, not to romanticize anything, but people just don't want to live a life. Like everybody wants to be somebody or do something. And that's not a bad thing, but sometimes people just need to be regular people.
Yeah.
And I think our society, we don't prioritize that in our society, because with the absence of something, we look to celebrities and we look towards, like, I don't know, like for lack of a better term, like we look towards like it's our culture, like the Rockefeller Center and the Carnegie Hall, like everything is built around these big titans of industry and these idols. We make idols out of these people. And then we look to celebrities to take up the slack, and that it's got people somewhere. I don't know where, but
That's a really interesting point. And to be honest, the one thing that really stuck with me after our conversation is when you were just like, man, you just gotta be a person. And that
Yeah.
I've been thinking about that every day since we talked. And like, it's just, I I think there's a mix, because there's definitely a mix of people who don't think big and who just kind of I guess get stuck in kind of the traditional rat race and aren't really looking to do anything with their lives. But then there's also people that are like constantly trying to do things and constantly trying to find the next opportunity and to find and I that's kind of um to an extent, that's kind of the kind of, I guess, route that I took, just because I've always had just like a huge motivate in like intrinsic motivation just to do more, well, keeping time and making sure that I have time to spend a ample time with friends and family, because at the end of the day that's the most important thing.
Yeah, it really is.
So yeah, I mean, it's really about kind of finding that balance. And sometimes I'll find myself sitting here and just like I feel like I'm down here, my parents are paying big money for me to be here. I should be like I should be on my computer, I should be working, I should be constantly doing something, when really I just got to be a person. Everyone just got to be a person and just kind of.
Yeah, you do, man, because like your parents, that's why they saved the money to send you there. Like they didn't send you there to say, so you could become some robot, like or like if the best that we could have hoped for any of it was just to come out and work for 75 hours a week, like that's not what they're hoping for, like. And if that's the best that we could hope for educating a whole generation of people, was that they just came out and got jobs. If it was like the first generation, like built the country and took the rocks out of the ground, and the second ones went to school, and the third ones, in the name of Jack Donaghy, and fictional NBC 30 Rock character, and if the third generation just wants to take improv classes, go snowboarding. I forget what the exact thing was, but then how does the place you're from ever get any better? And I guess that was in my aquaponics greenhouse that I built. It actually burned down now, but that's another story. I was given a tour to a group of guys, and the guy I forget where he was from. I think he might have been from Colorado or something, but he was a professor at King's College. And as I'm like talking to him about the super efficient wood burning stove, and I'm showing him the aquaponics and how we make charcoal and all this other stuff that we're doing there. And he's like, what happened in your life that you got stuck here? Kind of is what he said to me. And I would have been taken back by it, but I kind of just said like, well, if everyone wants to go to Colorado and smoke hash oil, how does the area you're from ever get any better? Like all of the smart, you hear it, brain drain. You hear it all the time. People talk about it, and it's like, well, then it's a real thing. How does the area you're from ever get any better if all the people who want to do something different leave. Like I would have been one of 100 guys out in Colorado with a beard trying to do aquaponics. You know what I mean? But I'm one of one here. So I can have a whole captive audience, and I could be talking to people who I would never be able to talk to in 1,000 years because they'd look at my shirt and they'd see the holes in it and they'd be like, I'm not going to talk to this guy. But now I could talk to a Coors Light guy about the quality of the water in the river. The Susquehanna River was very polluted. And you could read articles about it, but it's a lot of it is agricultural runoff mixed down to the Chesapeake Bay, algae blooms and stuff like that. It's a big problem. That's what it is. And before that, it was polluted with a lot of industrial waste. You know, when we were kids, there were no eagles flying around, you know, the area. I live right on the river here. There was no eagles in Pittston, man, when we were kids. You know what I mean? Because we used to swim in the river. And, you know, now there's eagles, you know, and that is a direct result of the water quality improving to the point where the eagles can now make a living in Pittston, where before they couldn't, you know, like because the small fish and crustaceans have come back because the water quality has improved. So like, those are just some of the ways now I could talk to someone in my hometown who I would never have a platform with before, but he sees me building a mud oven. He sees me working with my hands. So like I have some street cred with this guy right away. But I'm thinking about something totally different than this guy. But now we're talking about the quality of the river, and we're just two people. We don't represent a political party. We don't represent any affiliations other than just like, yeah, the river's gotten a lot cleaner. You know, you're right. And then, so now I'm able to talk to people in the community about things that matter to me, where they're not priorities for people around here. Just the regular Coors Light guys, you go talk to them, they're not talking about that stuff, you know, and not what they're talking about is, or what I'm talking about is any better or worse. It's not competition. I'm not competing with those guys, but I want to be able to talk to those guys about things that are important to me. And the only way I can do that is to kind of gain that street cred, to show that I'm, you know, like I'm a worker, you know, I'm willing to do it, you know, like I'm willing to get my hands dirty. So that allows me that opportunity to do it. So that was what I said to the guy, you know, like, that's why I'm here, you know, and in a long and short, you know, reason was like, and, you know, and he was like, okay, you know, like I get it. And I was like, that's what happened in my life almost, you know, like I decided that is what I want to focus on versus chasing some vanity dream of my own, you know, and then they all are vanity dreams, you know what I mean? But, you know, that's why I stayed. You know, that's what kept me here, at least. You know?
Yeah, it's a really, you know, I think that in my case, kind of distance makes the heart grow fonder or something. There's some quote, you know, with getting away makes me, like I said, appreciate more. But I'm taking a class called Effective Altruism right now. It's a philosophy class, and we're just kind of, you know, talking about a bunch of different things on how we can do the most, we as humans can just do the absolute most good for the most amount of people. And, you know, a lot of these kids in general down here come from a lot of money on the East Coast and New York, New Jersey, and cities, and very, very few small towns or towns with, you know, at the I guess socioeconomic status that mine is at. So every class that I'm in, that I'm able to say something, I feel like I'm speaking on behalf of us. Like I'm speaking on behalf of these small towns that otherwise just wouldn't get any credit. People don't even, I'll talk to a bunch of New Yorkers and they won't even know where Wisconsin is. They're like, oh, is that over by Michigan or by Chicago? Or like, come on, man. Like, but you know, I'll often raise the point, like if I ever get rich, like I'm gonna prioritize taking care of my family first and my community second, and nothing else after. Like, you know, those things, there should be absolutely zero problems in those two places before I go and buy myself my Tesla Model S. But like everything else should be pretty much
I feel the same way, man. I just start putting sidewalks in. Like, I just start painting houses, like move over, we're painting your house, lady. Like, it's happening, whether you want it or not. Like, I'm paying for it,
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know why. I guess that's with not growing up with money. You could see maybe how you would spend it better, but like, could we be the only two altruistic guys in the world? Like there has to be some people. I don't know. Like, I guess if it's not generational money and you have to work for it, then you have as much money as I do. Like if you're constantly working for that check, but you're making $750,000, more often than not, you're going to have a $750,000 lifestyle. Where you need that, and the people that I know,
there's always trade-offs, right? Like
the people that I know with generational money, they're artists and they're like race car drivers and things like that, and then they're on flights of fancy, because they don't live in a world that is governed by actual consequence. Like the consequence for missing the train at the Vale is that like you have to take the next train to the mountain in Vale, and that's fine, but like that's not like a consequence like where you're like, man, if I don't pay this bill, like the heat won't be on, like, or like if we don't like have this, then like we're eating pasta again, like, or whatever. It's like and I was never that poor growing up, like where I had to worry about things. Sometimes I might talk to my father, who's like grew up in this area, blue collar guy, and doesn't understand some of these cities. Like, well, they could just go to school. Like some of these kids just go. I'm like, listen, Dad, we've never had to worry about our actual survival. Like we're worried about your surviving, like the day, where you're just like getting through the day. When you're trying to get through the day with no food in your stomach, you're not thinking about school. Like you're thinking about getting food. Like, or if you're worried that like you can't go outside after a certain time because you might get shot. I never had to worry about that in my life. So like, I'm lucky from that angle, like I could know what some of these things feel like, but some of those things I don't truly know. I don't necessarily need to know though to empathize with those people, to understand that like, hey, something's wrong in the system somewhere, and for me to want to be able to make some kind of difference for those people, at least, at least that was Pittston anyway, but everywhere's different. Everyone has a different experience, and it doesn't matter that if someone doesn't have to worry about their life, it doesn't mean that they're suffering any less than somebody who does, because every individual experiences are different. Things affect people differently. Right. So like that can't be the standard to judge it, or I don't want to create a standard to judge it, like I'll let the philosophers worry about that in the next round, I'm just trying to get through, like right now I have 2 hungry cats trying to get into the door right here. Going nuts. So I see like paws are swiping underneath the door like this, That's actually one thing I didn't disclose about myself. I have an Instagram for my cats.
Okay.
All the kitties, MUH kitties, for anybody out there who's interested in cats. Let's let them in here. They probably don't want to come up.
Yeah, it's all
Aaron's done with tubby time now. They're getting fed, so
yeah. It's everything is relative, and it's easy to get caught up into the day-to-day and to forget about like, all the people that are unfortunately way worse off than us. Like I feel like I feel like not unless it has to do with like the death or illness of a loved one, like I feel like I have no grounds to complain. Like I should, nothing to complain.
No, me either. I really don't. And I don't get too, I am an existential person. I will say that, but I don't get too caught up in the doom and gloom of the stuff. Like ultimately,
what do you mean by existential?
like things weigh on me.
Okay.
Problems of the world tend to weigh on me, and I tend to see them sometimes in the worst way you can.
Mhm.
But I don't let that affect me negatively. Like there was a time in my life in the early YouTube days, you have to understand, like some of the videos that were out there, would now be considered conspiracy videos today or something like that, but like in the early days of YouTube, you didn't get that information anywhere else except for YouTube, and some of it was true, so like I did the cynical bit in my 20s, where I was like more cynical then in my 20s of things than I am now, Now I'm just more realistic about them, That was a weird time though. It was right after 9/11, and there was a lot of, weird stuff happened then, and then after it, as a result of it. So I was a lot more cynical then about all of that stuff.
Yeah.
That included politics and things like that. And just the hopelessness almost, But now I see that was just the point of it all was to disenfranchise, was to leave me feeling disenfranchised, like I couldn't do anything or I didn't have a say. So I kind of got rid of all that thinking. But I still kept some of it, the healthy dose of skepticism about everything. But now I'm just more realistic about things, and I can only really control what I can.
Right.
I can feel bad about these situations, but if I can't like directly control it in some way or affect it, then it's hard to spend so much time worrying about it or being upset about it when it's like, no one else is going to carry the cross. You know what I mean? And if I'm whatever it is, like if you become anti to the point where you're telling people about it, anti whatever, then you're actually promoting it. You become, if I'm anti milk, and all I do is say like milk is terrible and I rail on milk all day, then I'm now promoting it. Like I'm essentially working for what I despise then. So I had to like give up a lot of those things that I was like, we need to abolish the Fed, or like whatever, like some kind of idea that like I didn't truly understand, but it made me feel a certain way because it gave me an order or gave me somebody to blame or gave me somewhere to focus the feelings I was having. So now I can just be realistic about all.
I feel like it's kind of all just like an energy game. Like we as humans are constantly kind of faced with positive energy and negative energy and negative energy and positive energy, and it's really just how we perceive it. And a lot of that, like when I was at my worst, like mental wise, I mean that was a year and a half, like basically from mid junior year through senior year, because it it was to the point where I was seeing the therapist. I was looking at I thought I had something wrong with my brain or something, but it completely shifted when I got down here to Florida, and I actually got COVID the very first week, and had a 10-day quarantine. Luckily, my mom was here, so I stayed on the beach. But I deleted my Snapchat. I rarely went on my phone those 10 days. And I just gave myself time just to be with myself and just to think. And I think that, when I was at my worst, I would just go on my phone because I thought that would like fill the void, when really whenever there's a void, I feel like in our lives, when there's nothing really necessarily happening at that exact moment, like that's the most important moment, because there's enough drama that naturally arises in our lives and so many things that naturally come that we don't give ourselves time just to like appreciate the time.
Yeah. Well, that was one thing we did talk about last time, was that, and I'm lucky, I feel lucky that I didn't have a smartphone until I was 29, That's because it just wasn't a thing, you know what I mean? It was like the iPhone didn't come out until 2007, I was 27. And I didn't get that right away. I still took years to buy a Windows phone. And, so we didn't have in college Snapchat and things like that. And I'm happy that we didn't, because it kept me engaged in whatever I was doing at that time.
Right.
Which sometimes wasn't any more than anyone would be doing with the phone, but at least it didn't give me the, because I find myself now, if I'm just sitting there, I got the phone, I'm like looking at Reddit or like posting pictures of the cats. But it's in a way where I could selectively use it. Because when I talk to my nephew and I talk to him, because I look at the computer and the internet, especially, was like the best tool ever.
Of course, yeah.
It's like so unbelievable. And I think that is why it's dangerous too, because like the printing press, when the printing press first came out, there were countries that outlawed it, and the church controlled it, and it was burned and banned and things like that. It was because of the knowledge, and the internet is the same way. Now it's basically, talk to the internet, you got 10 companies, man. That's it. That is the whole consumer facing internet now, is what, 8 websites, you know what I mean? Like a very small, it's been boiled down and filtered down into a handful of really, really huge companies that, control basically what you see. Not in like a censorship way, but like, it's curated to your likes and your interests. It's like, my YouTube ads probably look a lot different than your YouTube ads because of the content that we're consuming is based upon those ads. So it's taken the exploration out of it, and it's watered it down,
Yeah.
I don't remember what it was like before that, though. That was the thing. Like, that's how fast it changes. Like I saw the very beginning of it and used the very beginning of it at Penn State, you know what I mean? When all the AOL dial-up stuff, like, and I just don't remember it. I don't remember what it was like, but I know it was different. I just remember using it in a different way. It felt different, like it felt so much more wild and dangerous, and so much more information. I felt like you could find whatever you wanted, and I guess you can now too, but it's layered now. You got to really search for it now.
Yeah, and now we're used to it. Like I've had an iPhone since 6th grade, and I know kids are getting them younger than that now. Like it's, growing up with that, it's like, I mean, that's just how we grew up. Like we grew up with the internet, we grew up with phones and iPads and it all, and it's like, it's kind of sad and scary that like the misuse of it, that more kids my age haven't figured out and seen the misuse in it and the negative aspects of it.
Well, yeah, because you almost can't, because it's just something that has always been there. We had a true analog. I had a true analog experience growing up, all the way up until now. I am in a digital adulthood and choose what technology I want to use and see it as that. When I talk to my nephew, he only sees it as a portal for consumption, consumption of media or games or something. And it's not, he doesn't look at it like a tool.
Or production, tool for.
He's looking at it like it's a box for consumption. This is where I play my Roblox. This is where I might do my thing. And he's young, he's like 12, but when he was growing up with it, that's where he does Roblox and his train simulator and his farming simulator and all of those things. It was just a portal for consumption, and not like this tool where, to me, it's just as valuable as my hammer, or something I would use as a physical tool,
Yeah.
That's because I have a lot of older friends too who didn't have any of it. Now my friend Bonnie, she was my best man at my wedding. She will like text me the other day. She's like, Amos, I just did my taxes online. Like, this is amazing. Thank you for giving me the confidence. I'm like, I'm like, that's amazing, Bonnie. Pretty soon, like, I need to come to you for internet questions. And so to watch an older person go through that, where she was almost like, no, I don't want anything to do with that. Like, I'm not giving my information to the, like the internet or whatever. I'm like, if you have a cell phone, it's out there. Like you're already out there. Your information's out there. She's still
Yeah,
waiting.
it's a weird paradigm shift. Like I'll see like a young kid like glued to his mom's phone or his phone, I don't even know, just like playing a game, and I see that as so like because I mean, like, yes, I grew up with, I mean, basically I didn't I was never big into like video games or anything. Like I guess I had somewhat of an analog childhood as well. Like I would constantly outside, constantly playing outside, and it was just, it's weird because my best friend has two younger siblings. One that's, I think, that's a freshman in high school now, and another that's even younger. I think like fifth grade or fourth grade or something. And it's just interesting to see, just in the past, whatever, in that kind of 10-year span, how different the technology, how much the technology has become more into our lives. It's literally like with each younger kid, it's like
Yeah.
more so. And
And
I
just
and
get
it's
into it earlier and earlier and earlier, man.
and I view that as bad. Like I say, get outside. Like, come on. Like, can we just like just like be a kid? Like, just like, and but then there's the flip side of it. Like when my grandpa got an iPhone and he downloaded Spotify, and he found out that he could listen to any song that he could ever possibly want. Like,
Like completely mind blown.
right.
I don't know. What will come out of it though? Like it wasn't until people started farming and having like moving away from a hunter gatherer kind of society, and the advent of farming gave people the time to ponder the stars and to write songs and art and literature and things like that.
Mhm.
Will this now, like, as you and I might see it, like, oh, these kids need to like engage their brain in a different way. Like, will something good, come out of the newfound whatever they're doing, using the brain in a different way, or pondering questions that you weren't able to ponder at a certain point. Like people weren't able to look at the stars when they were hunting and gathering because they were just too busy trying to get the rabbits and pick berries. And then it was like, man, we're growing all this food here. You write these songs and I'll do this or whatever. Like, will there be another change in how people live, or will something come out of it? I hope so. Like, I just think the ultimate goal, like people never would have came out of the mountains and formed the societies if it wasn't just to live easier and to make your life easier as a person. So you'll hear some people will say like, oh, humans are naturally violent. It's like, I don't think so, because I don't think we would have made it this far. Like if we were truly like, if all they wanted to do was be violent, we wouldn't have come this far.
Yeah, I think with anything, it's just about keeping a balance. Like, I don't care how far in the future we are, like when we become robots, and I don't know, when, like, I've watched some Elon Musk interviews, and he's talking about that, like, Neuralink. Basically, he's like talking about how eventually we'll be able to communicate without talking. Like, we'll be like, I could have a conversation with someone and just be thinking it, and like they would like hear it in their head or something, like something crazy. And it's like, I don't know what I think about that, because it's like, that's technological innovation at its finest. But possibly at its worst too. Like, that seems like something out of a Black Mirror episode too. Like,
Yeah.
I view Black Mirror as a really interesting thing, because that's literally, the whole show is based around like the possible negative implications of technology, like technological advancements in the future.
Yeah. Well, we're seeing it now. Like, to me, it's already happening because we've already created. We have the technology for everyone to have food. We have the technology and the resources for everyone to have a house. We have the technology and the resources for everyone to be cared for. And people say, oh, there's not enough of this or that. It's like, well, sorry, guy, there's enough. Like, there's so much abundance. Technology has created so much abundance. And at this point, we've created things that we just we are using them in very small constructs. Like like if we're able to, like the greatest minds of the world are able to produce a way to get a remote controlled bomb to the middle of a desert, right? Those same minds could be getting those same people food, but there's no profit or whatever involved in that mechanism. So like we have this really basic brain that just has not evolved to the point where we are applying the things that, like the application, like, yeah, I'm all for the Neuralink. How's it going to be applied? Is it going to be applied so you don't have to talk to the person so you could work 18 hours a day?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, or is it going to be, applied to make it easier for some kid who was born that can't talk to vocalize words to his parents? I'm all for the technology, like being a big food guy, like GMOs and stuff like that. I'm inherently for the technology. I think it's a great thing if humans have gotten to the point where we could take a gene from a fish and put it into a strawberry so it doesn't freeze. But then you come back to the application. Am I in favor of a large corporation being able to manipulate, the process where they're controlling the seeds, the food, the feed, the pesticides and herbicides that go on it? Are we going to have a position where we're letting those same companies that develop the seeds and the pesticides and herbicides that go on it regulate the amount of pesticides and herbicides go on it? No, but that's what's happening. That's why, I'm for the technology, but against the application, because it's being applied in a way that's like, it's proprietary, and everyone wants to be proprietary, and everyone wants to, stake out their little claim in the world, and it doesn't matter. 100 years you'd be dead anyway, and 50 years after that, it'd be public domain, so it's like, where are these guys going? Like everyone wants to be the first guy here or the first guy there. It's like, guy, you're going to be dead in 60 years. Like, what are you doing it for? Like, what are you doing it for?
Yeah.
Like, is it just for like your own glory? So I did it,
That's the interesting thing, because it's like just today we talked about, like, we read this article on like long-termism and like should we be as effective altruists? Should we be completely guided by the long term? Should to the point where we don't even care about the short-term problems? Like because the total like expected value of our work is going to be so much higher, like the good is going to be so much greater if we focus solely on making sure that we can stop climate change, or making sure, but we can't forget about our own communities. Like we can't forget about the street corner that you live on.
Yeah, you got, if you want to eat applesauce, man, you got to grow the apples. Okay, so it's like yeah, you got to be looking forward to the future, but you have to be doing things in the now at the same time. Mm-hmm. Like there's no way around it. And some of the problems that we have now, I think we're always right around the corner from some kind of technological breakthrough that's going to change the way that it's done. Like right now, our best scenario is that we dig up large swaths of the earth and we put our garbage into it. And we take our garbage and we put it into bags, and a machine comes around and takes it to a place and they put it in the ground or on top of the ground, and they cover it with the earth. That's the best solution we have for garbage right now. But in 15 or 20 or 2 years, they're going to be digging that garbage up because they found out that they could do something with it. It's like, I just read an article the other day that they're finding out that they could take plastic and turn it into some kind of graphene. Graphene was like all the rage a few years ago, carbon-based stuff. And it still is. It's still like, but the development of it and things like that are there. People are still working on it and doing things. But like, no one would have ever imagined that 10 years ago, that they'd be turning plastic or potentially turning plastic into graphene. You know, no one would have realized 50 years ago that there was a microbe that they discovered, some kind of fungus or something that is dissolving plastic and turning it into methane gas, which could be captured to spin turbines, burned and spin turbines to produce energy. No one thought of those things, 50 years ago. It wasn't a possibility. Like even the big jumps are having in nuclear technology these days. Like no one thought it ever would have been possible to do the things that they're doing. So some of the things that we're worried about right now will be solved by the technology or the advancements or things, the breakthroughs and stuff. So yeah, I'm all for the long term, but you got to work on the problems in the short term. Like we don't want. Did you ever see Idiocracy?
The what?
Idiocracy. Did you ever watch Idiocracy? Well, it's a great movie. You should check it out. But it basically starts out where there's like a garbage avalanche. And I hope it doesn't get to that point where we just can't figure out something better that we get into a great garbage avalanche. But if you ever want to watch
it's like Toy Story.
Yeah, or like Up. Up was a movie that kind of was like I don't want to say dystopian, but kind of. Idiocracy is a comedy. By Mike Judge, the guy who did Beavis and Butthead. It's old now for today's standards, but it's a cult classic, and it always has a revival because the stories, at least the storylines, are pretty funny. It's a really funny movie, but it's also kind of just totally goofy, and it's a commentary kind of on maybe it isn't a commentary. I don't know. Some people say this, some people say it's not. But watch it for yourself. Make up your own mind.
Yeah. No, I think one of the biggest like right now issues with technology is just I guess it's probably just because I see it every day, just social media, and just like I think it was especially prevalent and relevant, and you could see it during like the election, and just kind of like group thought, and like my business law professor last semester asked the class like, well, what are the biggest in general, what are the biggest problems facing like society? You get your answers like racial injustice and climate change, and I said group thought, because it's like we're forced into this like idea structure, and these ideals, like you have to be on one side or the other, and it's not like that. It's just the majority of people believe there's good on both sides, and whether it's any for anything, like Democrat, Republican, whatever, it doesn't matter. Like there's good and bad on both sides, and we're just I think humans are naturally, our tendency is to want to like side and have kind of a group behind us. It makes us feel more like legit, like, but we're just scared to be like, to just kind of have our own thoughts. So we would rather go on Instagram and share to our Instagram story what everyone else is doing, just for the status. Like,
humans, I think in general, want to have an order. They don't want to feel like it's arranged, or they want to feel like someone's pulling the strings. So they want, maybe it is, maybe it isn't like that,
but that's the arrangement that man made. Like I didn't grow up in a super religious family, but I've gotten more spiritual now in the past few months, just having a new mindset and getting away from those like structures that man has made. Why can't we just look at the structures that God made, as God is a thing? Like, let's just, if we, and instead of constantly looking at our phone, yes, there's so much to learn, and yes, we can use it as a tool, to put content out and to consume content that makes us more intelligent. But can we just like take a moment just to like look around us for a second at both the natural world and natural surroundings, and just at other people? Like, can we just look in real life for a second rather than looking at this all the time? Like,
how many likes are you gonna get doing? You're not gonna get many likes looking at the stars. It's I don't know. I mean, personally, I do. I try not to do those things, but I do. I find myself looking at the phone. You
Yeah.
know, I'm mindful. I'm mindful of it. I'm mindful of. I will sit in a waiting room and not look at it. Sometimes I was doing it the other day, but I will sit there in a place and just not do it. You know, look at my thing. So I love to get outside. I love to go hiking and stuff like that. When we were kids, we did it a lot more. But recently, Aaron and I have been going a lot. Just because it gives you like hours to just be tuned out and just be in your head, you know, walking, you know,
Yeah.
looking around, you know, and it's like
It's so simple, but it seems so like foreign to the majority of people.
I'll tell you, man, I go to a bluegrass festival every year up in Oak Hill, New York, called the Gray Fox Bluegrass Festival, and I go up for almost 10 days, and I go up with my friend Karen, who introduced me to the festival, and she's been going for 30 some years. And I go up basically by myself. Erin doesn't come with me. She went one time. I tell everyone I brought her once strategically, so she'd never want to go again. But she liked it, but it's not like, you know, 5 days using porta potties is not her thing. So it's like, you know, a lot of people it's not. So, but almost for that entire time, I don't look at my phone because there's no internet reception.
Mhm.
The last few years they've been bringing in like AT&T and Verizon boosters, but that's only in one part. Like you still have to go down to the field or something if you want to have reliable access. And I still check in and say like, hey, you know, or send a text or whatever. But it's great. Like all those days I'm not looking at my phone. And then like when I turn it on, I'm like driving back down 87, you know, and it's like you have 38 new voicemails. You know? Man, 38, you know, like, and it's all completely stupid and meaningless stuff. It's like, you know, when COVID first came around, the job that I work at, I do project managing and estimating for a commercial flooring company. But part of that too is we'll deal with residential customers and different people like that. And in any industry, in any time you're dealing with anyone, there's always going to be people who think that they deserve more than anyone else and they need it now or whatever it is, you know. And like some, you know, person called me like, well, can't, they were like incredulous that like they couldn't get into the warehouse and look at their carpet or something. And it was like, are you actually saying this with your mouth right now to me? It's like, do you realize what you're saying? Like there is like, you know, people, you know, whatever, you know. It was just like I couldn't believe that in the midst of anything else, like that was this woman's priority, was getting her carpet clean because the dog shit on the carpet and she's gonna have a party. It's like she needed to have the carpet cleaned and I needed to get it done for her. And I'm like, absolutely not. You're like, sorry, it's just not happening. You know, some guy was like yelling. I'm like, we're gonna have to go somewhere else. I'm like, go somewhere else. You know, what do you want? What are you gonna do? Get online and scream or call the Better Business Bureau? It's like, it's 2021, guy. Like, what are you doing? Like, I don't care what you do or who you tell. Like, you're not getting it. You know, you can't talk to people. Like, you can't talk to me like that. You know, like basically what it comes down to. You can't treat people like that. You know.
Yeah.
We might have been talking about the customers always right last time, but that's where that comes from. You know, you hear that saying, the customer's always right.
Yeah.
Like, where did that come from? Where like a person just could come in and just like.
And then that turns the business owner or the business person into that robot that has no judgment for themselves, right?
Yeah, it's like, this is a person you're screaming at over a counter about some receipt. It's like, this is a whole person.
Yeah.
You know?
That's why I just hate labels. Like we're just people. We're all just people. I'm not like I'm not the business.
Gotta be a regular person, man. You know, it's at one point I try to have you know, I wanted to look a certain way, but now I'm like, I just want to look as regular as I can. I don't want anyone looking at me for any other reason. You know, like I just want to be a regular guy. Like,
Yeah.
hey, look at him. He's regular, you know, but I might be thinking about things totally different, you know, and that's where it comes down to. If you have a conversation with somebody.
Right. And then the reputation comes from what you've actually had the conversation about, or your reputation is what you do, what you say, you know,
Right.
rather than how you look, which is those are the things that are truly in your control. Those
It
are
really is, man, because I work, like I said, in a customer service and sales capacity where I'm talking to people. you know, if they might be purchasing, you know, like I'll be working on a job that's like $750,000 job, right? Like a contract might be $750,000. And that's a big job in a commercial application. And then when I'm talking to a person who's putting carpet in 3 bedrooms, right? And they're spending $2,000. You know, I treat that person the same because I'm a person. $2,000 is a lot of money to me if I'm putting it into my own house. You know what I mean? So you have to treat each of those people the same exact way. And I can't, you know, I'm not going to make any special exceptions for someone who's paying more or paying less. It's like I just treat them both the same, you know. And I tell them, I say, like, I live in this area. Like, I live up the street. Like, I'm not going to sell you a bill of goods that are false here because I have my own professional reputation to worry about. When someone's dealing with me, they deal with me as a person, not because I'm representing a business. Like, because at that point, you're only dealing with me. I might be working for a place, but if I'm going to have to encounter you out in the world, in the community, or down the street where I live, like, I'm not going to sell you a false bill of goods because then it comes back to me as an individual.
And it's like, even like the first couple of years of for Ketchup Please for us, like I was, you know, when we first kind of started, like it was like, okay, now that I have a real business, I mean, I guess I had the landscaping business. So I've always kind of had that, like, kind of, okay, now I represent the business. Now all my actions and what I say represents the business. But then I thought about it. I'm like, if I have to like act a certain way or like act good just because I have a business, I feel like that's a problem. Like I should just like, you should just like do things good and just do things the right way, just for doing things just for the sake of doing it right. Like just
You're doing it right, man. You know, that's like so much of that stuff comes back to that first job I ever got because it was like, you know, when you really want to get to see people or get to experience something different, go wash dishes. You know, you want to see how the lowest of the low gets treated in the totem pole, go wash dishes. You know, it's like you really get to learn about people when you're washing dishes. Yeah, like you might just be cleaning dishes physically, but you're learning, you know, so much about how people treat you as a person.
Yeah.
You know, and we've always worked. That was like and I always felt that way. Like no matter what, I would always have that to fall back onto, my working capital. You know, like I might not have a ton of actual dollars, you know, but I have a ton of working capital, as Corey likes to call it, built up now with people. You know, like in a capacity where if someone is dealing with me, they know that they're dealing with me. I'm not going to because it's my own reputation. You know, like and I've made it by working with people and by treating people with respect, you know, and no one can take that away. The only person who can ruin it is me, you know. So I guess that's what I have control over at this point
Right.
in my life.
Right. Yeah, it just comes back to that. It just comes back to just controlling what's right in front of you. Like you can control what you say, think, and do. And that's it. Everything else there's no reason to spend time worrying about it at all.
Well, that's why I said I was like an existential person, you know, like
and to not have expectations. Like I've tried to like learn to just like not have expectations of people, you know.
yeah.
So I read a quote somewhere, happiness equals reality minus expectations. So
Yeah,
just
I mean,
have to have expectations, and you can see that reality is like has a hell of a lot of good, has a hell of a lot of bad, but the good wouldn't be as good if there wasn't the bad.
Yeah. No, you're right, man. I mean, I don't know. This is the existentialism, you know, like when you talk, you know what I mean? If you talk about, you know, I don't say big picture stuff, but like bigger picture stuff. I'm not a sports guy. I don't watch sports. I don't have a favorite team. I don't have anything against it. You know, it's just like you mentioned video games before. I like to play League of Legends. You ever hear of that game?
Yeah.
That's like the only video game I play these days.
Yeah.
I do have an Xbox 360, barely play it anymore. And I bought a little Nintendo, one of the ones preloaded with all the games on it and stuff like that. So I'll be doing that, or playing music, or hanging out. Got a little workshop downstairs, man. Built that. It's the winter, can't be doing anything outside, but
Yeah.
some try to like stay involved or engaged in some type of thing as opposed to just, I don't know.
It's all about staying. It's like, yeah, just like staying active. Like, yeah, the feeling of just like those more, yeah, just like working with your hands. Like, there's just, I mean,
Yeah, doing something like that, and not getting caught into the work hustle flow.
yeah,
That thing where you're checking your emails on Sunday night and you're, like we talked a little bit about that the other day, the constant need for productivity and to be measuring it in some terms of being able to, like see the opportunity cost. That was like a big thing at one point, people talk about, and it's a real thing, but it's like, what else are you going to be doing? What else are you doing? You know what I mean? It's like, I'm not going to evaluate the opportunity cost of me going, spending 2 hours in the basement versus sitting on the computer for 2 hours.
yeah,
Like, I'm done with all that. You know what I mean? I don't have to worry about why I spend the time I spend it. It's just like, this is what I want to do right now. I'll spend it.
yeah,
And I still have that luxury now, having more time now, like some of the time that I did have in college, because like I don't have kids, and a lot of my friends my age have kids, and it gets consuming. Your life becomes their life, and the milestones are measured by the soccer seasons and the birthday parties and things like that. And it's great. Like I get to watch my nephews and nieces grow up and stuff, and but I see my brothers, at least my one brother, measure, his life is now the kid's life. It's like the birthday parties and the whatever, and it's harder for him to have that time to be able to do whatever he wants. Like he can't go down in the basement for 2 hours, and do whatever he wants because he's got he's got kids, and that becomes a part of it.
yeah,
Maybe that will get me later in life, but maybe not, because no
yeah,
matter what, your kids could turn out to be total jerks regardless of what kind of person you are. Like, no one has control over that. They're their own people.
yeah. I feel like before, I mean, obviously I have a few years, yet, but before I have kids, like I wanna just like master like child psychology, like, and how I can just like make this kid just like the
Oh man, I don't even want to say it, but you say something like that, you're gonna end up having a kid next year.
oh, I'm not saying
I
that. No,
don't
no,
want to
no,
put that on you, but
no. I'm saying how can I like it's weird because like um I I try to learn just from everything. Like we have more, opportunity to learn than ever before, but the majority of things that I learn from are people and like this conversation we're having, or even just like my parents. And I look at like I have great parents. Like, I had a great childhood, great, I was raised super well, but I see that there's certain things that like my parents do that I wouldn't want. Like nothing, obviously nothing like horrible, nothing bad, but things that I wouldn't necessarily um, want for my kids, like to have in their parents. So like I look at that as I try to like see, for example, like all the great things that my parents do. I try to emulate those things and just cut out all the bad things and just try to be the very, very best version. But at the same time, it's like, I'm pretty damn happy with where I'm at right now. And I'm pretty happy with kind of what that, how they raised me and kind of what that brought out in me, to the point where, you know, the imperfections, that's like the whole game. Like that's everything. Like it's, and I was thinking before, I'm like, I really just want to, I would always say like I would not let my kids grow up in this place, like 95% white, 95% conservative. Like I want my kids to grow up hearing different points of view. But then I rethink it and I'm like, well, I'm not like everyone else. Like I'm open-minded. My parents weren't necessarily in that conservative mindset, so I heard both points of view. So it's, you know what I mean? Like it's just
Yeah.
there's never going to be an optimal perfect.
No, there's not, man. And a lot of the things that your parents, my parents, I think it's just a lot of that stuff. Parents have expectations of their children, you
Mhm.
know, and they expect you to do what they think is right. And some of those things that they think are is right are some things that they didn't get to do, or maybe they didn't have the opportunity. Maybe they were too afraid, or so they force those things onto us, to try to like, this is what you should do because I did it. This is what you should. If you have done this, if I had done this, my life would be different. Therefore, you do this and your life will be different in the way that they would have thought it would have been different for them. Um, I had this similar upbringing, it was totally homogenous, this area, and my parents uh, were not open-minded to things that were different from what they knew, you know, whether it was conservative or liberal or, whatever it is, like they knew what they knew and that was it. And I grew up different than that. It was like because there were different things, different opportunities, different times, like they didn't have the same experiences that I did and stuff. I got to travel a little bit. Not a lot. Like I was never a big traveler. I went twice. Erin, she has traveled all over the world, and I've gone to two places that were not the United States, but they were still Western countries. You know what I mean? To Scotland and Switzerland. You know what I mean? Two regular places where she's been to Vietnam and Saudi Arabia and different places like that. And there's tentatively a trip planned with my friend to go to Lebanon and Jordan, which would be pretty neat.
Yeah.
Just to experience something that is totally different than what I'm used to here. Scotland was it was really like it was a beautiful place, and there I had some really good experiences. I met people. The biggest thing I met or found was like anywhere I was, I talked to somebody that was from Scotland. They were like vacationing in another part of Scotland, which I was like, that's weird. I'm like, we rented a car and drove around the whole country in a few days. I'm like, how could you have never seen this place? And I was like, well, wait a minute. I've never spent a night an hour away from my house in Pennsylvania, 2 hours away from my house. So we started going on these little trips where we would go just 45 minutes away, get a
Yeah.
hotel room, have some dinner, hang out. And that's become a fun little way of kind of like, so after having that experience there, talking to those people, that were like from one part of Scotland, but then they were in the Isle of Skye, which is another part of Scotland that they'd never seen and never been to, and they were vacationing there. And I was like, all right, well, I need to take in a little more of what's around me, um, to appreciate it a little more and to see what's actually there and stuff. So that was a cool part. Do you want to travel, or do you have any aspirations to do that? Is that on your list of things to do?
Big time. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I just want to see everything because I mean, if I have the opportunity to, but yeah, and it's again, it's a big appreciation thing. Like not like because we have this place in northern Wisconsin, and it's just I'm obsessed with just like culture and just like how different cultures are, and it's interesting that nobody else would really suspect that how different a culture within the same state, just 3 hours north could be. Like
Oh yeah.
it's great. It's a complete shift. Like up, I
Well,
mean,
I feel like Wisconsin, like you said, is agricultural and it's different things, but like mostly agricultural. I feel like that experience is probably a lot like the experience that people have here in Southeast Pennsylvania, especially Lebanon and Lancaster, some of the areas because those are really big agricultural areas then and now. Like they've
yeah,
continued to be.
yeah,
So
but
I feel like a lot of that, might have a lot of parallels there. Where in the area I'm from is different from those areas because it's been boom and bust so many times where the wealth of the area has left. But
Yeah.
the wealth in the area down in Lancaster was farming then, and it still is now. So like it might have decreased, but it's still there. Like it's a way that's more substantial in a way that is
Yeah.
like, so it is. You could be in a totally different place in 3 hours.
And it's all perception too. Like the average person would look at, up where my cabin is like a shitty middle of nowhere, like just absolutely nothing. And there's not much, we're on a lake, but which is nice. But especially in the winter, there's not a single soul for 20 miles. But you know, it, it there's a lot of things to do, I guess, in Wisconsin summers, but the things that we'll do on an up north trip, like it, especially when we were 16, 17, and we were just driving up there alone, and we would stop at the adult gift sex shop and just like go to the bars, and we'd be like literally 16 years old, and they'd be serving us some cervezas, and it's just like it's a whole nother world. That's like the wild north up there, man. Like it's for being 17, 18 years old and seeing that, like it's just
Sounds like fun, man. It's I'll tell you. Admittedly, I've never in Wisconsin. I never drove. I was up and down most of the eastern seaboard, and a few years ago we took a trip out west. We had some friends who lived outside of Seattle, in a place called Ballard. This is actually where we came up with the ketchup. Was out there, was where the idea was first born. So I never did it's on my plans to do the cross country drive, and I'm going to drive across country and stay in some random places.
yeah. Well, like I said in you got to get that book Green Lights. Like it'll open. It's like, I mean, because he said, Matthew McConaughey says his favorite place is behind the wheel of a car. Like he just loves, and he talks about how he like tricked out a van, and he just spent a couple years, like when he got super famous, and he just had to kind of regain himself. Like he would just drive across the country and just do whatever he wanted to do, and that he just him and his dog, like he just enjoyed it, and yeah, I mean that's something that I want to do eventually, just be able to just drive, because it's a whole nother sense of freedom and just like reflection that otherwise you'd like really never like get.
Yeah, because that time alone, like you're forced to just be with yourself.
Right.
You're forced to just be there, and you can't do much other than think when you're driving. You can listen to things and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Music.
It always struck me, like my dad often doesn't have anything on in the car, and I would like he'd pick me up from whatever baseball practice, and he wouldn't have any music on. I'm like, what are you gonna like turn some music on or something? And he's like, nah, I have plenty of stuff going on in my head. And I'd never understood that until recently. Like, I
And
I was always like, that's kind of weird, but now I fully understand it.
I could drive for hours in the car with no music, but then a huge music fan. I love
Yeah,
music.
right.
So I will listen to it sometimes the whole way, you know what I mean, and be engaged and into the music the entire time. But sometimes, like I've driven to Florida before. That was a nice long haul from Pennsylvania. Anyways, it took 18 hours in the car, whatever. Me and a buddy, and we went right through. Stopped in the Carolinas and Georgia and stuff like that. Didn't spend any significant amount of time along the way, just for gas and whatever. But yeah, I love to drive. I do. I love to drive. That's what we did. We rented the car and drove around Scotland, which was interesting because it was, left-hand drive. And roundabouts are a big thing in
Oh yeah.
all
Yeah.
throughout, the UK, which is interesting because like they put a roundabout up by the airport here, and like people were going bananas. They went on like Talkback 16, and it was like the local news station. They're saying it caused the tornadoes, and like they're just like cursing at like going crazy. Like it's
Wait,
so
about roundabout by you.
yeah, like around the roundabout, it was causing the tornadoes, as the lady said on roundabouts causing the tornadoes, and everyone was like they didn't understand it, and it was just like
What the?
Par for the course, like people just don't, the old way is what they've been used to and they don't want to change. But when we rented the car, got in the car, there was a pamphlet literally on the steering wheel that like said, that told you how to drive a roundabout. And it's like, yield to the traffic that's in the roundabout. And like,
Are there traditionally not roundabouts like in Pennsylvania? Like,
no roundabouts.
By me, they're big in Wisconsin.
Okay, so like the infrastructure that's here, like we're going back. You know what I mean? Like the anthracite coal regions. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
The some of the towns around here, like you can go to still some towns where they're still actively mining. And it's funny, there's a town, I'm not going to say it here, but there's a town that's not too far from me, south of where we're from, which is still an active mining area, that I visited for the first time last Halloween or 2 Halloweens ago. Some business there or something. So I went through the town and I couldn't tell which houses were decorated for Halloween and which ones were actually just falling down, because there was caution tape like all over the place. You couldn't tell. Like some of them you were like, okay, they're clearly decorated for Halloween. That one looks like it's on fire. Like that's how bad it was. Like literally row homes just collapsing in on one another. And it looks like pictures that you'd see out of like, if you look at some pictures of Camden or Trenton, New Jersey, or like some areas, like super industrial areas in and around big cities that people have just totally, that are gone. They're not even there anymore. And the houses are just collapsing. And I was like, I couldn't believe that. It was only right down, an hour away from me. That same environment exists an hour away from me.
Right.
Just so blown away. So like, yeah, when roundabouts came to northeastern Pennsylvania, people were like lost their mind. They could not deal with roundabouts at all. It was like literally they were calling and like cursing at the news people. Like, and it's not like the news people went out there and put them in. It was just like that intense,
Yeah.
Now they've like have a few more that are like successful. People understand them, but yeah, they didn't. There was this pamphlet on the steering wheel in Scotland that said, yield to the traffic that's in the roundabout. I'm like, that makes a lot of sense. It's like had no problems the whole time around the whole country, but
it ain't that difficult.
we loved it though. I loved driving around Scotland. It's so cool, man. You get to these roads like in the middle of the mountains back there. It was like so neat. I want to go back, because it was the first time I was the first time I was out of the country. So I was like still a little bit apprehensive, like I really didn't know like how to handle myself or what to do. And then I realized like I'm just a guy. Like these people don't know I'm from Pennsylvania. Like, then when I meet people, I say I'm from Pennsylvania. I wouldn't say I was from the United States because like it was like 2000 something, 2000, it might have been 2015, 2016, going into the 2016 election season.
Yeah.
I was like not telling people I was from the United States just because like the only thing people wanted to talk about then were politics or guns. Everyone was like, man, it's like you really like our guns on. I'm like, yeah, you can get them in. I'm like, yeah, you can buy a gun anywhere, man. I'm like, they have vending machines with guns. They're like, what? I'm like, no, it's not that crazy. But basically, like, you can get a gun anywhere. Like it's really easy to get guns. So people really wanted to talk about that. Like they really want to talk about guns.
I know, and I feel like when I've talked to like people outside of the country, like, well, I haven't done much, but I mean, like, for my Spanish class, we had this cool thing where we like linked up with a school, like a Southern American school, and we got one from like Chile, and they just like, the first thing that the girl I was talking to, like it was all about politics, like, and she was like pressing me. She's like, do you like Donald Trump? Like, please tell me you don't like Donald Trump. Like, I'm like,
yeah, like the whole world wanted to talk about Donald Trump in 2016. They really did. Like everyone was like, like basically like I was the guy responsible for it. It's like, well, hold on now, let's talk about this. And most of the time, it was like just conversations, whatever. And the George W. Bush people really they were interested in that. But it's funny, when Erin went to Bali, she like said like, people were like, Obama, going like this, like in the thing, like, because they loved him.
Yeah.
Like minorities and things from in these countries, really saw that as like, and people don't think about that, like um, what that means to certain people or whatever. Like all politics aside, you know, that was a pretty big thing,
Yeah.
for America.
I think the one thing that I've kind of realized is just like the more places that you see and the more like kind of, well traveled you are, if possible, like it's just your perspective is just so much like greater. Like you gain so much wisdom just from like talking to different people from different places and seeing different places, seeing the way that different people live. Like
Yeah.
it makes you kind of get a much broader perspective. Like, but at the same time, there's still so much value. Like I still see so much in like my grandparents, for example. Like they were both, originally from Wisconsin, and they actually built the house that my mom and like that we live in now. And then they sold the house to my mom and my dad, and then they bought a house like three houses down. So like they've been in the same neighborhood now, for a long time, and that's it. But we have something really special. Not many people are able to say that that you can walk over to your grandparents three houses
Yeah.
down whenever you want. So
No,
yeah.
you're right, man. Yeah, it's I have one grandmother left. My grandmother on my mom's side is still alive. She's just turned 95.
Okay.
She's getting up there, but yeah, grandparents are great, They're like everything that your parents want to be. Like
Yeah.
they want to like be that old person eventually with their grandkids,
Mhm.
I think that's what everyone wants to be, at least that old person in some capacity, that means you've at least made it through life, or certain I don't know, some parts, man. Who knows, Yeah, there's a lot to get out there, man. You're gonna have a lot of opportunities to do whatever you want to do, and so will I. That's the good part about it. We get to make our own future. You
Yeah.
know.
Yeah. I got a lot of time. So yeah. So what? Just to kind of wrap things up here, is there in general, what are you? Two things, I guess. Is there any general things that you still like to touch on? And I guess second, what would um what do you want to, I guess, both be known for and be proud of when you're laying on your deathbed?
Man, um, you know, I do talk to a lot of old people, and just saying that they had never heard anyone say, "I wish I worked more." You know, never heard anyone say that. Like, "Oh, I wish I had more time to work." Put in more hours at the office. So like, I just want to do the opposite of that. I just want to like eat good food. Um,
Enjoy
you
the
know,
now.
yeah, right. Enjoy the time that I have here because it's not
Mhm.
much left. Because no day is really guaranteed. Like we could talk about these things in terms of future, but something weird could happen tomorrow. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? So it's like, yeah, I would just want to be known, I guess, for just treating people like regular people.
Mhm.
Like, yeah, I remember that, Amos. He always treated me like I was a regular guy, regardless of what happens or in my life. I just want people to be able to be comfortable around me and be able to say, like, yeah, he treated me like a regular guy.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, that's it. People, I I asked that question at the majority of the end of the podcast, and uh, the natural tendency would be for me to think, well, if I am always asking this question, then my answer better be super, elaborate. But it doesn't need to be, because like that sometimes like the simpler answers, or like the answers, like those are they're just like the best, like they're just like things that things that everyone can attain, but very few do, I would say. Um,
Yeah, because if you ever meet anybody who's got it figured out, they're selling something. You know,
but
like
yeah, I read somewhere, or I heard Jordan Peterson. He's a guest that Joe Rogan has on all the time, but he said you can either be in love with what you know or in love with what you don't know. That's the root of humility. You can like always be learning or always trying to pitch what you already know.
Yeah, right. Like if you're, somebody's telling you they got it figured out, then they have some kind of brand that they're selling, and maybe it's good. I mean, it works for them or whatever. But yeah, like everyone, like I always wondered, if there was a time in life, like I'm like, I just turned 40. Is now the time I could stop worrying about things that happened when I was 15? You know, is now the time to forgive myself for mistakes I made when I was 15 years old? Could I stop worrying about those things now? And that's the fear, you never forget, you know, there's never a defining moment where you're like, I'm an adult, you know, everyone just has their best guess and goes forward. And when you get to the point where you think that you know it, you never figure it out, and that's what happens to people. They adopt views as their own. They believe that they have figured something out, or they believe that they've heard something enough times that sounds good, and they're going to prescribe to that particular belief or set of beliefs. And then they cannot be reasoned with, because if you get to a certain point, if you build a whole construct of yourself around a certain set of ideals, and you find that those ideals aren't real or whatever, or they're not true, it's like, think about how many people died just to prove the world was round. There were a time in this world, I'm not talking about the flat earth stuff now, that's just for internet points, but there were real people like involved in that, and if your whole construct is built upon something that could be proven to be false, and then you have to face that reality, that's really heavy for a lot of people. That's why, like, I would never tell like an old person, oh, God doesn't exist or something, regardless of how you feel on that. Just using that as an example, because who am I to tell them that? Like, if they built their whole life on that, like, I'm not going to come riding in the last hour and change their mind, like, oh, you're right, Amos. What have I wasted 85 years of my life for? So yeah, trying to treat people like regular people.
Yeah, and it's just letting people do whatever makes them happy. And I had someone come up to me at the farmers market that I was doing the other day, and like she was saying, like she was asking me, well, what are your streams of income? How are you making money right now? Like she was saying that so much more, so much as an 18-year-old that you should be monetizing yourself. You should be like creating your personal brand. I would rather just be that person that gives away. Like, I'm not trying to host workshops and make money. Like, I have no aspiration to do that. Like, the one thing that I like, or one of the things that I just like want more than anything is for like a young entrepreneur, that grew up in a similar situation to me, or even not, just to like reach out and just like say, hey, I have this idea for this business or for this food business. Like, can you help me? That is what I want. You know what I mean? And I would give them as much time as they need. I am not trying to monetize anything other than the brands, the actual businesses that I'm building. The moment that I try to, monetize like me as a person, that just seems kind of like that defeats like the being a person thing. Like, you're not a person, you're a robot,
You're a product.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, yeah, well, I think we're on the right track. So this was really good. Let's definitely keep in contact here, and
Yeah, man.
rooting for the success of both of our businesses. And it's funny, we didn't even talk about ketchup once, but that's not, the ketchup is just ketchup. I have a little Heinz packet on my desk, and it just serves as a reminder that it really, like, it's just ketchup. Like, we can't overcomplicate something.
Yeah. It's that's what I tell people, man, and talk about it. It's like, look, it's ketchup, man. You know what I mean? It's like people put on hot dogs. Like,
Yeah.
If something happens with it or comes of it or something, the experience that you're getting now and the experience that I'm getting now and the things like that, they could be transitioned into so many different things at this point that whatever happens at this point, man. It's I can't control it. We're just gonna keep trying to do things. But this is what happens when I talk to people in a capacity when I'm dealing with ketchup. I'm rarely talking about ketchup, man, and I'm talking about all this other stuff that comes with it. Just because that's what it is. But yeah, we could have some conversation some other day if you want to have Q&A about the ketchup.
Yeah, for sure. Well, maybe even we have actually we just started a YouTube channel for our ketchup, but maybe we're gonna start taking like questions, like we're gonna do a Q&A just for like that channel.
Nice.
Yeah, maybe we could do a have you as a guest or something. We'll keep in touch, definitely.
Sure, man. Absolutely.
Cool. Amos, it was great having you.
Yeah, bud. Thanks for having me on.
Yep. Have a good night. We'll keep in touch.
You too, man. See ya.
Bye.